I mean, it's important to remember that at the time, we were going through just incredible hypergrowth. There was a single onboarding class that we did with 100 salespeople in a single day. And that was, we were joined when it was about 100 employees, went to 1,700 about 18 months. So just crazy amount of growth.
It's time! Work, play, evolve!
I want to connect the listeners to the best of the best. Welcome to the Evolved Broker Podcast, coming to you on the first and third Mondays of every month. I am your host, Pat Costello, the co-founder and principal at Evolve MGA. Our mission for the podcast is to bring the insurance industry the best of the best. My guest today is the co-founder and CEO of one of the newest insurtech unicorns in the industry. Niji Sabharwal founded a company called AgentSync with his wife, Jenn, in 2018. They met while working at LinkedIn together, where he served as the global sales strategy and operations manager based out of Ireland and then San Francisco. Niji moved on to become the head of sales strategy and operations at Zenefits. If you are not familiar with the Zenefits story, it is wild. They were a hyper-growth HR startup that received a $4.5 billion valuation. Unfortunately, they grew too fast, with multiple sources citing overhiring, reckless company culture, and disregard for insurance licensing regulation. Niji was the guy that was tasked with fixing the problem. The remediation plans he set up for Zenefits helped him come up with the idea for AgentSync. He and Jenn have come up with a way for the insurance industry to automate producer licensing and compliance in real time with software. In our conversation, we discussed Niji's personal background, his experience with LinkedIn, the Zenefits story from his perspective, how that translated into his idea for AgentSync, and his plans for changing the insurance industry. Please download, subscribe, and leave a review on whatever platform you are listening on, and feel free to reach out to me at pat@evolvedbrokerpodcast.com with any comments or suggestions for the podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by First Insurance Funding. First is the leading premium finance company in insurance and is known throughout the industry for their personalized service and quote flexibility. If you're tired of sending quote requests for smaller premiums to multiple companies, not leaving enough time to negotiate larger opportunities, then choose First as your primary financing source and experience the First difference today. Without further ado, here is Niji. Niji, welcome to the Evolved Broker Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's great to officially meet you. I know we talked off camera, but one of my buddies from high school, Robbie Allen, I know is working for AgentSync, and you guys are connected. So really small world there. I am really excited after looking at your background to learn more about your story and hear about everything you have going on with AgentSync. And I saw that you went to Pali High School. Did you grow up in Palo Alto?
So yeah, I actually went to high school in Palo Alto. I grew up in the East Bay, a little town called El Sobrante. It's just right over the bay from San Francisco.
Okay. Cool. Small world. Like I said.
Yeah, very, very small world. Like the insurance industry, I didn't know how many people that I knew from high school or like previous roles that are now involved in some way in the industry. It's pretty cool to see. Yeah,
it's insanely small, especially from my perspective, because my dad was in the insurance industry and my grandfather was in the insurance industry. My family's deep in the insurance game, so I've heard so much about it just growing up. So I totally understand what you're saying. So you went to high school in Palo Alto, and then you went to UCSB, right?
Yeah. So went to so kind of grew up in the East Bay. Actually went to a French American school for École Bilingue. It was a French American school, and it was in Berkeley. And then went to Pali for high school, and then went to Santa Barbara, which was probably too much fun for undergrad. And it was studied economics, really great program, but it's mostly just sitting on the beach like half the days, which is really, really fun.
I can imagine. I made a couple trips up there when I was in college, and I know we visited Isla Vista, and there was, some massive Halloween parties that would go on, and there was one that was in the water. I think it was like Flowtopia or something like that. Yeah, that was a scene for sure.
Yeah, man, it was so much fun. Looking back on it, it's hard to picture.
Yeah, well, it's also very ironic because it's really hard to get in there, So it's a lot of smart kids that are having a good time.
Totally, very hard to graduate. I can tell you that.
I had a lot of friends that went to Santa Barbara Community College, and that's, I feel like, a place you should go if you just don't want to graduate.
Totally.
But your first job out of college, it looks like, was working for LinkedIn in Ireland. Tell me about that process and how that worked out.
Yeah, so actually I graduated in 2009. It's a terrible time to graduate, especially with an economics degree, and couldn't get a job at Pete's Coffee. I couldn't get a job to save my life, actually, for it's like 6 months or so. Mm-hmm. And ended up landing a gig managing a stamp and engraving shop in Berkeley. And so I was kind of running the front office, and I was actually making stamps and engraving trophies. It was actually a lot of fun. Definitely not what I wanted to do with my career. And then I was at a Halloween party, and I met a recruiter from LinkedIn who back then, as 2000. It was 2010 by that point. LinkedIn was still very new, right? It was basically a startup in Mountain View, and a couple hundred employees. And I was recruited at this party. I was the first sales hire for this recruiter who just joined LinkedIn. And my first gig there was a junior salesperson doing sales development there. And 3-month interview cycle. It was pretty crazy, but landed the job there, and started my career in technology there in Mountain View, actually. And I was able to kind of pitch. I realized that there wasn't a lot of really strategic planning around that role and around systems and just building good, efficient processes for the sales teams to, go out and prospect leads, qualify them, and get them over to a salesperson. And so I was able to kind of pitch a sales operations role, and was lucky enough to move myself into that role within the first 6 to 9 months. I was in that role, and started building out the operations program for the sales development team. And back then it was maybe less than 10 people, and ended up growing the team into over 200 sales development reps globally, over 9 different offices. And part of that evolution was moving to Dublin, Ireland, which is the EU headquarters for LinkedIn, and building out kind of sales processes and building out the sales ops team for the EMEA markets over there. So I spent a year in Ireland over it was 4 years or so I was there.
That's super, super interesting. I am like 94% Irish. but I've only been to Ireland a couple times. What was it like working in Ireland? Was it a culture shock?
Not so much. I'm actually half French. I have a French passport. So I've been, I think I was in Ireland maybe like one time before that, but living in Europe was always kind of a dream for me. Just the access to, we were able to get on a plane and go to like Paris for dinner and come back the next day. And flights are dirt cheap, and it was a great place to be in, especially in your 20s, to go and kind of learn a whole new culture and learn a new country and have that experience. It was really amazing. The weather was a bit of a shock. I knew how gray and rainy it could be there, but it was hard to stomach after a while, because you don't see the sun sometimes for a month.
That's amazing that you were able to start at LinkedIn when it was 200 employees, and obviously it is what it is today. Really a name brand in the technology world. What was it like being at a company that I'm sure was scaling super fast?
Yeah, so this is a good question. I was part of the early wave of the hyperscale, and it was around 400 or so employees when I joined, and when I left, it was probably like 8,000 or 9,000. So just
oh my gosh,
crazy scale. And it was mostly centered around kind of an international expansion. So getting, the product localized, getting the go-to-market teams up and running in each country was challenging to, at best, because you think about the European markets, buying behaviors there are so much different than in the US. You have to be very thoughtful about how you assign certain salespeople to different geographies. So, I mean, one, there's obviously a language barrier, but it's also, Ireland is a great hub for hiring a great talent that is English speaking, but half the team had an accent, and so there's certain certain nuances you have to navigate. For example, for let's say a SDR rep from Spain having a Spanish accent, you can't have them selling into certain areas of the UK market, for example. It just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So there's just interesting, interesting team building and strategies around how to deploy a sales plan across that many different countries and languages.
I can only imagine, and I know the Irish accent is a bit hard to understand at times. I know, I personally, when I was studying abroad, I studied abroad in Germany, and we made a trip over to Scotland, and we were so excited to finally be in an English-speaking country. And we get off the plane, we asked like the first guy that we see for directions, and we quickly realized that what we thought what the English-speaking advantage for being in Scotland was not the case at all. We could not understand the guy from the word go. So, I'm sure that must have been a really interesting challenge to tackle those international markets. Was Reid Hoffman the CEO when you were there?
No, it was Jeff was the CEO at the time.
Okay.
Jeff Weiner.
Okay. Cool. And if you were to distill major learning lessons from your time at LinkedIn into maybe like 2 or 3 major categories, what would you say were the things that you learned that were most important for your future career?
Oh, that's a good one. So LinkedIn had probably, it was the most well thought through plan and execution for a company I've ever seen. And at the time, it was my first real job in tech. And so I didn't have a lot of points of comparison really, but looking back on it, it was picture perfect execution. I mean, thinking about this big lofty kind of goal and mission, their mission was basically to create economic opportunity for everybody at scale. And if you think about the impact that LinkedIn has had on the world, it's truly remarkable. And you think 10, 20 years ago, the only way you would hire people is you post a job and they call post and pray. You hope the right person kind of finds a job and comes to you. Mm-hmm. But kind of being able to flip the script and go after the cream of the crop talent across any market, any geography. There's few companies in my opinion that have had that sort of lasting impact. Mm-hmm. So just picture perfect execution. Their culture and values were also kind of the best in breed. And the big ones that I'd say I took with me are act like an owner. That's actually one of our values here at AgentSync. And that's a really big one. The simple one, if you just to say it out loud, but truly acting with every dollar you spend, even like every flight you book, just realizing that everybody, is a stockholder and a true owner of the company and making decisions like if, you're spending your own money or you're making decisions for your own company. That's something I definitely took to heart. Mm-hmm. I'd say the other big one was truly investing in talent and really realizing that a company is just made up of a bunch of human beings with, driving towards a shared goal and a shared vision. That's an easy one to kind of forget as you get into the day-to-day, but making sure that the entire team is, a cohesive unit that's kind of rowing a boat in the same direction. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, and truly investing in your talent and really realizing that, we are all a bunch of human beings, and there's you got to meet folks where they are, and also just realize that there's a lot of stuff going on in people's lives, and especially with the pandemic, work has become a lot more human than it ever has. And I think going into it with that mindset's been very helpful for us.
It sounds like that you had an outstanding experience with LinkedIn. At what point did you decide to make the jump to join Zenefits?
Yes, this is 2014. So it was about 4 years after I started at LinkedIn. I went to Ireland, came back to the US, was here for about 6 months, and I got recruited into Zenefits to lead the sales strategy and operations team. We're about 100 employees at the time. Really interesting, disruptive, new startup that was really combining employee benefits, payroll, and HRIS as a full stack solution for small businesses, something that just hadn't been tackled before.
Talk about joining another company that was looking to scale fast. So, how many employees again did you say were there when
about
you started?
100 when I joined.
About 100. Okay, and you were based in the Bay Area?
Yeah, in San Francisco.
Okay, cool. What was it like seeing that scaling process versus LinkedIn? And at what point did you feel like maybe Zenefits was scaling too fast for its own good?
Yeah, good one. So first off, it's important to note that LinkedIn at that point, they grew very, very slowly for a very long time. It was a carefully kind of executed, very well capitalized as well, company that, really thought through this opportunity, how to get to it, and took their time really until they start pulling the hypergrowth lever. Zenefits, on the other hand, really amazing idea, was a business model that could be replicated across a few different companies, and that's definitely what happened. So there was a little bit of an urgency to get to market really quickly and capture as much market share as possible. So I'd say just the hyper growth from 0 to 100 was just a lot faster overall. And there was you could imagine what going to zero to 100 in a very short period of time, what that looks like. And it was we just ended up hiring too many people too quickly without all of the underlying HR, IT, the critical infrastructure you need to scale a company to 0 to 100, then 100 to 1,000.
Mm-hmm. Vanity Fair has an article where they describe like the Zenefits culture as something out of like Wolf of Wall Street. How close is that to the truth? I mean, is that just like a headline, or did you feel like the culture was a little bit out of control?
I wouldn't say it was more out of control than most, startups in San Francisco, to be honest. Like just a little bit more public. And there was the Sex and the Stairwells article that really didn't help matters.
Right. Like
at the end of the day, that stuff honestly happens kind of everywhere. Not at AgentSync, to my knowledge, but in the Bay Area, there's definitely a time and a place where that that kind of culture was all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And at a certain point, there was major scrutiny around producer compliance and making sure producers were licensed correctly to be able to sell insurance. Did you notice that at a certain point in your role, you're like, we need to get this fixed, or this is a huge red flag that we need to look at immediately? It sounds like you were kind of at the center of, or at least in the discovery process of like, look, this might be a mistake that we need to fix. Can you talk about when that realization happened and what it was like?
Yeah. So, it's important to remember that at the time, we were going through just incredible hypergrowth. There was a single onboarding class that we did with 100 salespeople in a single day. And that was, we were joined when it was about 100 employees, went to 1,700 in about 18 months. So just crazy amount of growth. So there were, we had, pretty small operations team, just small supporting teams in general. And we were scaling at a rate that just was too big for anybody to scale. to be honest. I can't think of what we could have done to get in front of, a lot of those issues. At that rate, bringing 100 salespeople into a system that quickly is just too many people. It's too many new heads too quickly. And so there were, 100 different big priorities we had about, where we're going to seat all these people, making sure they had the, the right equipment. We put so many people into, small areas that prospects and, customers couldn't hear them on the phones because they're standing so close together. So there was just a laundry list of high priority items that we needed to get right to, make sure that we could keep up with that, with that growth and that scale. And, one of the things that fell by the wayside was regulatory compliance. And we honestly didn't quite appreciate how, the highly regulated nature of the industry that we were operating in.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk about Parker Conrad stepping down and what you needed to do to put together a remediation plan to right the ship of Zenefits?
Yeah, so I can't speak too much, about Parker and him leaving the company. I wasn't very involved with those decisions, but I can talk about the remediation effort a bit. So basically, we realized that there was a problem. It was a lot bigger than we originally anticipated. We kind of put an honor system on a lot of the licensing requirements and put it on each rep that we're bringing in, as well as their manager, just making sure that they had the right licenses to do their role. And realized that, looking back, we found a bunch of gaps where we just didn't have the right licenses in time. And so, at that point, we basically self-reported out to regulators once we realized that that was a pretty big issue, and did a pretty comprehensive analysis to really identify how many violations we had across every jurisdiction, and it ended up bringing it to state regulators and work with state regulators to, talk through the remediation effort. Part of that effort was actually building in-house technology to basically connect our own Salesforce instance that we're using every day to kind of manage transactions, and connecting that system directly to state regulators so that we can in real time verify the compliance for every transaction that's going through a quote, bind, and before getting paid agent commission. So we're able to stand up those integrations, and basically we hired a kind of outside third-party engineers to come and build it. We built, really a best-in-class compliance monitoring and enforcement program. And we pretty much overnight, as soon as we stood up, we were able to make sure that no additional violations came through the system. Using those integration technology we built, which was really the idea for AgentSync at the end of the day.
So it was during that remediation process that the idea for AgentSync was born. What was there? Was the process just, when you were going through it, did you feel it was confusing, complex? There was just, again, we had kind of have our own little compliance department within Evolve, where we have to deal with licensing, and we have to make sure because every state is different and every state's changing. Especially for us, we have to deal with surplus lines. But is that, when you're going through that process, where you're like, this could be optimized, this could be a lot easier, and a lot of people are having to go through this, is that when you kind of discovered it?
Exactly, yeah. So we had a fairly rudimentary process at the beginning where we would have producers and their licenses in a spreadsheet. It's super typical across most agencies, and this stuff is incredibly difficult to navigate, especially if you're coming into it fairly new and you don't have a deep, understanding and really understanding the history for all these regs. And yeah, the ground's always moving below you as you're trying to build processes and automation around these regs that exist that are very specific to every state. So there's different continuing education requirements. Every state has different renewal requirements when the C credits are due. You have to go get non-resident licenses in all your states. You have to worry about if you're an agency, you got to worry about affiliations, making sure that you've affiliated all your producers kind of state by state, and you also terminate them after they come off, and then contracting with all the different carriers, and then having the carriers submit all the carrier appointments. So it's a rat's nest of complexity, and it creates this huge paper chase for both the agency, MGA, and the carrier alike. So kind of stumbling on this. On this underlying business process that need to be in place, coming from my background building tools for salespeople to be more effective at LinkedIn and then at Zenefits. Stumbling on this problem was it really blew my mind. There's no good technology to support this. This problem is ubiquitous to every agency, MGA, and carrier in the U.S. Just bonkers.
And most people probably don't know this, but I'm not sure, but you started the company AgentSync with your wife, Jenn, as the co-founder. Did you see all these issues at Zenefits, and were you coming back, and were you guys kind of discussing the idea and kind of like, we could be an excellent team if we hit the ground running and start working on this?
Totally. Man, it's bringing back a lot of memories. So, yeah, at that point, she was like my psychologist going home. It was a tough time for the whole company going through. Like we climbed to was a $4.5 billion valuation. The company was while it was going through hyperscale, and there was definitely some gaps in a lot of the processes we needed to be able to support the company at that scale. The company was doing really well, especially on the outside, and running into such a big a hurdle at that point was. It was sobering for everybody involved. She was definitely my psychologist going home. We were kind of talking through like the first day we were meeting with regulators, we just got punched in the face all day long. It was brutal. I mean, they were not pleased with us for good reason. I mean, it was tough times. So, I was more kind of just venting a lot of my, the days and frustration with her. And as we kind of shifted gears towards the remediation effort and started building we called it Licensing Plus, was the internal technology we built, and realizing that there was a software solution to this was pretty cool. Just kind of coming to that realization. And Jenn is she's our co-founder, CTO, and has been building tools like this her entire career. So it was definitely she helped kind of advise different components of like how to go about the build, what type of engineers to bring in, that kind of thing. And as we built it all, we realized that, hey, this is something that could have a lot of that has a market value for sure outside of that specific use case. So once we got through the woods with the regulatory issues, we were able to settle the violations in every jurisdiction, and able to actually keep our employees, the brokers, out of it, making sure that they didn't have any lasting repercussions for it. Once we got through the woods, we realized that, hey, this is something that that could have legs, and Zenefits was gracious enough to sign the IP over to me. And so what we ended up doing at Zenefits was took that internal technology, open sourced it as a free app on the Salesforce App Exchange for the entire industry to benefit from. And we actually got one of the keynote stages at Dreamforce to tell the story and basically talk about how we used Salesforce as a very specific way to solve this problem. And it was kind of a DIY type of build, because you had to integrate it to your own system for it to run efficiently. We had surprisingly, it was actually more carriers than brokers actually reached out about using the technology. I think part of it is Zenefits is a competitor to most brokers, and the thought of using competitors compliance software to run your own compliance was like kind of probably a scary thing. So we saw a lot of carriers and actually MGAs adopt the app and start using it. So that's when a bunch of light bulbs went off my head. This thing could be a lot bigger. And the first version was a pretty rudimentary version that just basically verified licenses at certain triggers as deals came into Salesforce. What we ended up building with AgentSync was above and beyond.
That's really impressive. At that point, is that when you decided to move from San Francisco to Denver?
Yeah, so we bootstrapped the business. So we were funding the business out of our checking account. It was actually mostly our the LinkedIn IPO money that we were able to use to get the business off the ground. At that point, Jenn was working at Stripe full time and managing a giant team. So she built out their business technology function there. I think grew the team to maybe 40 or 50 people. And I was working on AgentSync during the day. She was working on nights and weekends. I was basically just having to negotiate for time to get certain features out. And we got the MVP up, got in front of a few customers. I probably met with 100 brokers and carriers to just get their feedback and start iterating as quickly as we could. Because looking back on it, I knew this much about the actual problem that we were solving for, and that much was enough to get a few customers interested and bought in, and then they helped us actually shape what the product looks like today. So if you look at the products, probably 80% of the product itself and our roadmap is really focused on direct customer feedback as we were figuring things out. And then we save about 20% for kind of the bigger bets that we were going to make.
Niji, you have a star-studded list of investors from the Silicon Valley world. Mark Benioff, David Sachs. I'm actually a big fan of the All In podcast that he's on. Elad Gil. I read his book on startups. How did you go about raising capital, and what made you so successful?
Yeah. Honestly, I think product market fit and the team that we've kind of assembled is done 90% of the legwork there. But in the early days, so we bootstrapped the company. We got the MVP out very quickly, got a tremendous early traction the first year, and we were able to, we closed probably like 3 or 4 $250,000 deals back when we were, bootstrapped. It was like we were just like sitting in our kitchen, basically, building all the stuff, and I was running, 10 hours a day of Zooms before the pandemic too. So I kind of was almost like quarantining myself the year before anyway, with, working on this business. And, and then we realized, okay, we got some pretty special hands. This thing's a lot bigger than we originally anticipated. The market's a lot bigger. And we realized that, hey, this is not just working for brokers, it's also working for carriers and MGAs. And our customer base and really revenue split about a third between carriers, MGAs, and brokers. So it just kind of worked out that way. And so, as we got that early traction, we realized, okay, if we're gonna, take advantage of this thing and build, a decent moat so that we get ahead out in front of any competitors to kind of figure out how to do this, in any sort of competitive way, that we needed to raise some capital to fund the business and grow kind of beyond the means that we had. So we were actually using customer revenue because we got to cash flow positive. We're using customer revenue to feel good about hiring additional employees as we went. And, the idea was really to use cash over checking account to get, the first year up and running. And then if things were going well, we, Jenn and I would look at each other and say, like, yes, let's do this. And then we, went out to go raise money. And this was like February of 2020. It's like really, weird time to look back on.
Oh,
but
yeah.
So we made the decision to raise capital. So we made the decision to raise capital based on a business plan we put together, and we realized that doing it in San Francisco probably didn't make a ton of sense. We were trying to be really capital efficient at that point, and just competing for talent in San Francisco is really very difficult place to compete for talent. Retention is a nightmare there. Just cost of office space, everything's just really expensive. So we looked at a few different cities that we can go find the employees that we needed to build this business that would stick with us for the long haul, and fell in love with Denver right away. I mean, we have Denver, the the city center has a ton of talent here. We have good feeder schools from, Boulder, and a few others. There's actually Boulder, where there's a lot of tech talent there. There's a Denver Tech Center just south of Denver that's got a ton of kind of more senior talent. So fell in love with the city itself, being next to the mountains, being so close to Breckenridge, for example, go skiing. It's been a very fun place to be. So we fell in love with it right away, and we made the decision to move here. We ended up closing our house. We found out we were pregnant, and then the first lockdown was issued in San Francisco, all within the same, I think it was like a week or two. So it was weird times. And then we ended up we were doing pitches basically over a 2-week period as we were moving out here, which was also just really stupid looking back on it. We should have put some space between it, but we realized that we needed to raise capital. We needed to do it fairly quickly, given the trajectory that we were on. So we were fortunate enough to so Parker Connor, I was actually our first investor, and he wrote the first check into the company. And I think he sent out maybe like 8 or 9 intro emails to other investors, and that literally paved the way for every dollar that we've raised today. And so the way it generally works is you send out those intro emails. We pitched all of them, and then either went well, or they would send us in a different direction, say, oh, I actually know this other person would be really great for you to talk to. So what happened was we talked to Elad, and Elad said, oh, you should talk to Ray Tonsing from Caffeinated Capital. And we had like a 30-minute call with Ray, and then we ended up they decided to co-lead the round together. He sent us a term sheet that night, so it came together really fast.
That's super exciting. In terms of your ideal strategy for I guess if we're thinking about the clients that you think AgentSync would be perfect for, who would those clients be, and have they changed from the beginning of AgentSync to where AgentSync is now?
Yeah, so I'd say the core value proposition and the core use cases are still very much they're very relevant still today. So we really make sense for anyone who's involved in the distribution of insurance in any way, shape, or form. So carriers, MGAs, MGUs, aggregators, FMOs, IMOs, agencies, whether you're a 5-person agency to our smallest agencies. We probably have a few that are under 10, and then the largest ones are over 5,000-6,000. And then on the carrier side, we make sense for kind of smaller regional folks all the way up to Super Bowl commercial carriers. So we really play in every type of distribution model, InsurTech versus traditional. I mean, you name it. Because the one thing that's constant across all of those is how important distribution is and how important the producer is at the end of the day. I think a lot of folks probably more outside the industry probably think that insurance is going the way of being able to quote to bind online, doing everything through an app or website. Definitely not the case. Producers still represent the vast majority of every dollar premium written in the U.S. today. Mm-hmm. And so the one constant there is that relationship between the producer and the products that they have to sell through the underwriter. So we bridge that gap, do the onboarding, the contracting, the background checks, all the license verifications, the carrier appointment submissions, and we've got into a place where it's a commoditized experience that is quick, painless, and really creates a great broker experience at the end of the day versus going back and forth doing a paper chase with the compliance admin for 3 weeks. We have a self-serve portal where the brokers can basically do everything themselves really quickly.
Clearly, you guys are getting traction based on your last round of funding. You guys have a unicorn valuation. I believe you guys are still the most recent unicorn in the InsurTech world, which is super exciting. With the new round of funding, how would you describe the future for AgentSync? What are you going to do with that cash?
Yeah. Well, first off, I think healthcare.com actually they hit unicorn status right after we did. Just
okay.
A little bit of credit.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We'll give them some credit.
but we are the only insurtech unicorns focused on infrastructure for the industry, which is a really, really fun place to be. And so, what the future looks like for us, honestly, the valuation, the round probably hasn't changed too much. It just helps us making sure we have the right, war chest to fund this vision and continue on our mission. And so the big piece, I'm trying to be a little bit careful. I can't speak too much about it because it's not released yet, but at a high level, what we're doing is taking what we've built, which is really enterprise grade producer onboarding compliance platform. That's generally been focused on the agency or the MGA or the carrier, and moving to a world where we're actually going to have broker-facing products direct to individual brokers, and really with the aim of supporting them to reclaim their identity is a really, really important part of the ecosystem. Where I think if you look at the industry today, brokers are, there's varying degrees for sure, but brokers usually exist as a line item, a spreadsheet, and multiple carrier systems. We are working towards building a world where broker can own that profile and own that identity, and really wield that power across all the different carrier and MGA partners that they might be working with.
That sounds like a very exciting vision for the future, and I'm very interested to learn more once it becomes a little bit more tangible and you can provide a little bit more detail. But Niji, I'm really glad that we connected. As we said, it's such a small world in the insurance industry, so I'm sure we have tons of common connections and people who we don't even know that are, like I said, we have some sort of connection to. So we typically end with 5 rapid fire questions that you can answer as quickly, or you can take as much length as you'd like to answer these questions, but they're fun, they're professional. It's kind of a mix between the two. So if you're ready, I can dive into those.
Yeah, shoot.
Okay, cool. What is the biggest difference between Denver and San Francisco?
A negative difference, I'd say food. Denver has great food, but San Francisco is up there, and food is probably my like number one priority in life. I can actually say that pretty confidently. Number one. I have a daughter now, but you get the point. And then I'd say on the positive side, just access to nature is truly on a different level. In San Francisco, you have to wait. It's like a 12-month waiting list to go camping, for example, just to get a spot to go camping. Denver, you drive 20 minutes any direction, you're in completely pristine nature, where there's nobody else even walking around.
Okay. Connecting to that question, did you have a favorite restaurant in San Francisco?
Flower and Water.
Flower and Water. Okay. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't think I've been there, so.
Oh, I gotta check it out.
I gotta check it out. Yeah, because I'm in the northern part. I'm in Cal Hollow right now in the city, so I will have to check it out. Question number 2: do you have a favorite investor?
Ooh, we like all of our investors equally.
I figured that might be the way you have to answer that.
I gotta say, from a, which ones I just can't help but send a shout out to for how much we appreciate them kind of betting on us when, before it was, before we had a ton of success. Is definitely a lot. And Ray Thompson from Caffeinated Capital. Wasn't, especially at that point, there wasn't a lot of investment. There was barely any investment in underlying kind of infrastructure plays for the insurance industry, and they took a big bet on us, and we'll be forever grateful for that.
Cool. Question number 3: what is a better place to ski or snowboard, Denver or Tahoe?
Well, it's not really Denver, but Vail, Breckenridge, the Colorado over Tahoe for sure.
Okay.
That was a lot of fun, but the scale of the mountains out here is just way bigger, and the the quality of snow is a lot better because it's so much drier out here.
Okay.
And just higher altitude.
I'm very interested because I'm going to Aspen for the first time towards the end of February.
Oh, awesome. So, yeah, I've never been, but I can guarantee it'll probably be better like skiing than Tahoe.
Okay.
But I still love Tahoe. It's a lot of fun. But it's also like an 8-hour drive to get there from the Bay Area sometimes with traffic.
I know. Seriously. It's in the lines up there, and I know if you could get in midweek, I feel like that's ideal if you can sneak in there. Okay, question number 4. Are there any books that you would recommend to other entrepreneurs?
Ooh, I'm not reading anything right now. Honestly, I don't have a ton of time to devote to it. But the most recent book I've read I really enjoyed was this is a weird one, The Emperor of All Maladies. Definitely nothing to do with business, but it's kind of an interesting history and perspective on how different cultures think about cancer.
Wow. Very interesting. Okay, cool. Final question. Super general for you. What are you most excited for in 2022?
I mean, hopefully the pandemic to start to make its way out of our lives. I'd say that's probably the biggest one by far. And also we have a 15-month-old, so she's starting to develop a lot of, she's like turning into a little human being. So that's probably what I'm really most looking forward to, is having a conversation with her by the end of the year. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's super exciting. Well, Niji, thank you again for coming on, man. I'm really glad we connected. And if there's anything you need that we can ever help out with, don't hesitate. And the other thing is, if you're ever coming back to the Bay Area to visit family or whatever it is, if you want to connect, grab a cup of coffee, I'm always here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. This is a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Niji. Talk to you. Please download, subscribe, and leave a review on whatever platform you are listening on. And feel free to reach out to me at pat@evolvedbrokerpodcast.com with any comments or suggestions for the podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by First Insurance Funding. First is the leading premium finance company in insurance and is known throughout the industry for their personalized service and quote flexibility. If you're tired of sending quote requests for smaller premiums to multiple companies, not leaving enough time to negotiate larger opportunities, then choose First as your primary financing source and experience the First difference today.